the pizza, Right Coast Pizza, in 5 minutes. But I'd like to call to order the April 1st study session of the Wheat Ridge City Council. And we'd like to start by opening the meeting up to comments from the public on any item that's on the agenda for this evening that there are members of the public that would like to speak on this evening. Seeing none, I'd like to move on to item number 1, review of the master plan for 44th and Kendall Park. I'm assuming there's a staff report. No, I don't. But if you'd like to make one, I wasn't planning to ask. Would you like to? No, I wasn't planning to ask. No, we don't have to approve the agenda. It's a study session. But if somebody would, we have to approve the agenda? Well, we don't have in my notes for managing these meetings, it doesn't, the agenda doesn't, the agenda doesn't include a motion to approve the agenda, so I don't know what to do. I'm completely stumped. However, I will accept a motion to approve the agenda if there happen to be one for the all in favor? The agenda is approved as written.
Ready?
We would like to now move on to item number 1, review the master plan for the 44th and Kendall Avenue Park.
Thank you. I have here tonight with us are Bill Newman and Matt Whipple from DHM Design. They were awarded the contract for the design and construction documents of 44th and Kendall Park, which we'll present to you tonight. We had 3 public input meetings. Around 500 postcards were sent to the area surrounding 44th and Kendall. We had approximately 50 people attend over the course of the 3 meetings. So this is the results of both the creativeness of Matt and Bill in the design and incorporating all of the public comments that we got. So I'm going to turn it over to them and they'll go through the presentation.
Good evening, I'm Bill Newman with DHM Design, and we're pleased to be here tonight to share the draft master plan with you. The park site is 2.5 acres, and it's located here where the star is shown, just to the north of West 44th Avenue. And you can see West 44th Place coming in on the left or the west side of the site. These are some of the site photos. The one in the upper left corner kind of shows a view out to the northwest. And then the one on the upper right side shows a view directly to the north. The site generally slopes north. There are a few existing trees on site. All but one have been deemed in poor condition, so we would be removing those trees, all but one. And then down in the lower right's a view kind of to the west. So you can see this is the connection to West 44th Place. You can see the cars down in right here. So that's where the street intersects the park site. At our first public meeting, we established a set of 7 different goals. One was to work with the community to establish vision with programming possibilities. We also wanted to provide for a wide range of recreation types and residents of all ages and abilities. And we want to provide a sustainable park design that included water-conserving landscapes. We also felt it was really important to provide accessibility throughout the park, so all the walks and picnic facilities and trails, they're all handicap accessible. We want to provide a diverse and aesthetically pleasing setting. We're surrounded by fences and buildings and homes, and we want to really create a special place. We also want to design with respect to neighboring properties, and we heard from many of those property owners during the public process. And then finally, we want to provide a safe and highly visible neighborhood park setting. So it's visible from both 44th Avenue as well as 44th Place. So at our first public meeting, we developed 3 concept plans, and really the goal of the first meeting was to establish the program, what will happen within the park. So we did a quick presentation, and then we had great input from the community, what they'd like to see within the park. We want to have open multi-use play areas, picnic areas with shade shelters and tables. We talked about playgrounds for all ages, trails and walks, landscaping that includes shade trees, benches and different seating areas throughout the park, places you could gather and congregate in smaller groups. We talked about hard courts with basketball hoops, maybe some undeveloped natural areas, possibly some interpretive display, and a place for public art. So at that first public meeting, we began to shape the program, what people wanted to see within the park. And this is just a sketch. We had 3 different concept plans, and then we had images of what these different elements within the park would look like. And we asked for both written comments and verbal comments, and people placed dots on the elements that they liked. We also set up a website for the park and received comments from the public as well. From the input we received in the first public meeting, we were able to refine the 3 concepts, and we had a second public meeting where we shared 3 different layouts. So each of these plans showed different parking configurations, different layouts of the fields and where the playgrounds and picnic facilities would be placed. And based upon the input of public meeting number 2, we were able to further refine that plan into a single plan, which is this plan here. So across the bottom on the south side, this is West 44th Avenue here, and you can see West 44th Place right here. Let me zoom in a little closer. So if you were to drive to the park and enter from West 44th Avenue, this would be the parking lot right here, and you also have pedestrian connectivity off of the walkway right here. So people could come up into the site here or here off of the existing walkway system. This area would be a gathering area, a plaza space, possibly with public art. The street frontage, we want a nice presence along the street, and we would provide street trees and landscaping. Plantings, we want to both screen the parking and have a really nice street presence, nice curb appeal. As you enter into the park, you'd come down the walkway, and we would provide some type of a gateway on either side of the walk. We have shade trees framing the walk, and then right here, the loop trail moves to the northwest. This is the south open lawn area, and then this is a small multi-use court. And if I move a little bit further to the north, this is the picnic facility off the trail. So there would be a couple picnic shelters, possibly a small children's seating area with small tables for kids. We would also provide barbecues and picnic tables. Off of this picnic area, we would have 2 play areas. There would be one for intermediate age children here, and a second playground for primary age children. Also, off of West 44th Place, this is the second access point in from the neighborhood to the west. There would be parking here, and we would connect to the existing walkway system right here and tie directly into the perimeter loop trail of the park. Also at this location, we would have an enclosure for a portable restroom, and that would be well landscaped and screened. We also are providing a little bit of a rail fence at this location to help keep people on the walkways and on the trail system of the park. Currently, people come off of West 44th Place and kind of cut right through the backyard of this property. So we feel with the walkway system and a little bit of rail fencing, we can direct people right up to through the front of the park and out to the bus stop. So if I move a little bit further to the north, I'm sorry, went the wrong way here. So within that picnic area, we would provide a shelter, and it would have tables. They might look like these. Our next step is to start to work out the details, what all of these elements look like. Again, here's the restroom enclosure, something similar to this. We would have trash cans and benches throughout the park site. We would have bicycle racks, walks, and trail. The trail system that we're showing, if you go around the loop 6 times, that equals a mile for distance. And we would also provide some lighting at the parking lots and the loop trail connecting the two. Just enough light, downcast light, to make it safe between the 2 parking lots along the trail. These might be examples of what the play equipment might look like. We would also include swings and climbing structures. And then as we move further north into the site, this is the north lawn area. We've shown on the plan a kind of a conceptual grading. We would flatten this area out to accommodate open play. And then along the loop trail, we would have a seating area, maybe some kind of a focal point up here. We would wrap berming around this north edge, pick up the grades to add visual interest and screen some of the adjacent properties. We would have a mixture of evergreen and deciduous shade trees, both flowering trees and canopy trees. We would have a mixture of different landscape types. The plantings on the outside of the loop, this would be, the darker green would represent irrigated bluegrass. On the outside, we would do more of a native grass. So once it's established, we would cut the water off. And these are just some examples of the drought-tolerant plants we might recommend. Ornamental grasses work very well. Some of the shrubs, we want to have good spring color. We want to have good fall color. And then down in the lower left corner, this would be kind of the native grass we would want, adjacent to the bluegrass. So we'd have a mixture of the 2 turf types, keeping the irrigated bluegrass in the high-use areas. And this is just kind of the overall view again of the park. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you would have.
Questions? Mr. Starker?
Thank you. So we have parking for about 13 automobiles, is that right?
Yes.
Is that, Janice, is that a pretty fair number based on what we think the usage in the park would generate? And is there any parking off-site sort of adjacent to the site?
Yes, I think it is adequate because the park is designed to be a neighborhood park. The picnic shelters are small enough that we wouldn't be renting those to large groups. We'd like to retain some picnic shelters where people can just drop in and have a family picnic. So the idea is that many people that will be using the park will be walking there, but there is adequate parking if they choose to drive. We are trying to accommodate the park usage in the parking lots as opposed to on 44th Place on the street. We had several conversations about that, and based on the density of the housing there and just parking in front of people's homes, we want to make sure there's parking available in the park and we can meet the needs on site.
And is there any potable water there? Will there be any opportunity to take a drink of water?
You would need to bring water in
Okay, so
because
we
we'd have to buy another water tap in order to have a drinking fountain on site. So.
And there'll be one washroom, one handicap size portable toilet?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. DeMott?
Fencing on the north and west sides, is that just going to be the existing, because it backs up to backyards, right? Mostly on the north side? So are we just going to utilize what they have, or will we be replacing everything across, or?
Let's see, Bill, maybe you can help me remember. We weren't going to replace any of the fencing.
I'm sorry, I can't see it. No, we weren't going to replace the fencing. There is a small section of fence that's fallen down on the west side, but the intent was to provide berming and landscaping and not build new fences for the adjacent property owners. I did mention the rail fence, an open rail fence on the south side of the site, just to kind of direct people within the park so they're not meandering onto the adjacent properties.
Most of those are 6-foot fences, but are we going to allow adjacent properties to put access gates or something on their yard to the park, or
No, it would be our policy not. It would be our policy not to allow access through backyards into the park, which is consistent with our policies when we can do that in open space as well, or any other park site.
How do you enforce
people
them?
will be, yeah, that's what I was going to say, they'll be aware that if they put a gate in there or something, are they going to have to close it up, or how are we going to?
You know, I'd have to think that through a little bit. This isn't a problem. Of course, it's unique to this location. It happens.
It happens in my neighborhood above the park too. So.
Yeah, across the board. I'd have to think that through a little bit, and whether there was any harm in them having a gate. I know it causes issues depending on the type of park or open space area that it is.
Well, I mean, and I'm just wondering if they chose to take down their 6-foot fence and put a split rail instead so they can see the park from their yard. Are we going to allow that, encourage that, not encourage,
I think if it's their property and they chose to take down a 6-foot fence and replace it with something else, that would be their choice.
Okay.
It's pretty inconsistent across
But we're not going
there.
to pay for it.
Correct. Not at this time. We weren't planning on fencing the area. Now, I will just say, it depends on from site to site, because when we built Founders Park, that was a request that was made to put a 6-foot wood fence up to block those homes so that people couldn't trespass onto their properties. So, it kind of goes both ways, and we'll be responsive to the neighbors. We didn't hear any comments about that particular issue.
Ms. J?
I didn't real. First of all, I think the design is very nice. I'm very pleased with it. I do have a couple questions. Is this working? I didn't realize that we would not that the restroom is sort of a sanilet type of thing versus a place where someone could wash their hands or whatever. And do we have that at other parks? That system?
A sanilet system?
Yes.
We have a sanilet in all of our existing parks throughout the season, through the year. So, for example, at Discover, even though we have a sanitary sewer facility, that's only open seasonally, and then it's supplemented with sanilets during the wintertime.
Okay. All right. The other question I had was something I noted in our sustainability policy that we're also looking at tonight, where you're referring to water sprinklers that are rain sensitive. Are we able to do that with this park?
The irrigation system will be on timing clocks, and we'll use rain sensors to the limits of their ability to monitor that. So we don't have and are not budgeted for a sophisticated rain sensor program.
It's, I take it then, very expensive, or?
Well, let me say that a computerized program that you can turn on and off based on the weather from a home base is extremely expensive. And that's one of the best ways that you can conserve water. But we do have rain sensors in all of the parks, and sometimes they work well and sometimes they do not.
Okay, so we're doing the best we can.
We are doing the best we can.
Thank you.
Ms. Davis.
So I just have a quick question, and I'm on the website, and so I'm looking at the 3 different concepts, and then of course the one that was chosen. But the other 2 kind of have, I know this is stupid, but they have a full basketball court, or it looks more like a full basketball court, and then this one has like just the, what do you guys call it, a multi whatever. But the other 2 had like where if you wanted to play like full court, it looked like there was a full court available. But this one has a multi-use sports court, whereas the other examples had, they looked more like, they might have been a little smaller than a basketball court, but it looked like you could play full court basketball. Can we put that in there?
Well, I will tell you that staff asked the designers to put the smaller court in there with basketballs that weren't, so that you couldn't play full court basketball. And in part because we have a location for an outdoor full court basketball at Panorama. And it does draw groups of adult men that like to play outdoor basketball, not necessarily from the neighborhood. So we feel like we offer that at Panorama. This court is more designed for families that want to come and shoot baskets intentionally.
But Panorama's for, I mean, I understand, most of the park is a family thing, but I guess at the same time, if you want to get a neighborhood of folks to play basketball or something, I guess I would hate to have to go to Panorama to do that.
The issue is they're not generally from the neighborhood, and then they monopolize the court. I mean, we can certainly put it in, but I wouldn't recommend it for this smaller neighborhood park.
Mr. Stites?
Is it in any of those areas cost-wise or feasible to use AstroTurf at all?
Any of them are feasible to put AstroTurf in. It is a higher upfront expense, but we could do a cost analysis on that.
I just wonder if maybe, the smaller area or something like that might be.
To conserve water?
Yeah, because I think that's going to be a problem, from here on in on a lot of that stuff. But
I don't have a good handle. Maybe Bill does on the cost comparison between just the initial cost of bluegrass, of course, is lower, but over a 10-year period, I don't know if there's some data out about that.
The initial installation cost of the artificial turf?
Well, the long-term savings, say over 10 years, which is generally the lifespan of artificial turf, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't. It depends on the area. We'd have to run calculations on what the cost of water would be versus the initial cost of the artificial turf and then the ongoing maintenance of that. I'm sorry, I don't have a number off the top of my head.
okay. Yeah, just something to think about. And then I'm sure George and I feel that this money would be spent better off in District 3, but however, I think I like the plan since it won't be, so.
Anyone else? Any more comments, questions? Then I just had 2 thoughts. One, to follow up on Mr. Ahmad's comment at the Stites Park, which is near my house. They do have, somebody did come in and change and add a gate, and I don't know, certainly doesn't, from my standpoint, add any problems on the north side of the park. Somebody one of the neighbors just came in and changed their chain link into a gate probably a year and a half ago, and I don't think it's problematic in any way that I see. And then the other one, I was just sort of following on to Mr. Stites on the irrigation question. How did we decide, how much irrigated bluegrass we needed for a park of this? Was there, and this is just to educate me, but we have, how big is the park as a whole, and how did we decide how much the area needed to be bluegrass? I was actually asked this, but when I was walking in the community recently, it was, how do we minimize, how do we make the determination, what is a reasonable amount of bluegrass for a neighborhood park? If there is an answer, is it?
I guess we limited the turf to, we looked at a number of different layouts for the fields, and it was felt that two separate open play areas would be preferable. So if there were two different groups on site. And what we've done is we've created bluegrass areas in the north lawn and the south lawn as open play areas where it's flat, and then just the high visibility areas right at the entry of the park, and then everything else would be non-irrigated. The proportion is less than half of the site is irrigated with bluegrass. There's no set rule or prescription.
Okay.
It's just a matter of, open play areas that you could go out and kick the ball or play frisbee. There's no rule of thumb.
There's not. Okay. I guess that was the question. Is there a minimum distance you throw frisbee? I don't know if there is.
I was just going to add the other thing. Just based on the program, we knew the site wasn't big enough to say have a soccer field.
Right.
So that would be, if the program were to have a soccer field, then it would help the criteria within some, you decide that there would be more bluegrass because you just need a certain size field. But
Okay, well, thank you. I guess staff, if there are no more, go ahead. Okay, thank you.
Do you, Joyce, have just to follow up on Christie's question, the court scenario there is very similar, I suppose, to Paramount's. Do you have any actual or anecdotal information about the use of that at Paramount?
It's used a lot.
Okay.
I don't have anything other than a lot.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, we go up there often. I've seen someone playing on it twice, I think.
Oh, okay.
But I get it. I get why. I get the reasoning. To me, obviously, it's an investment, and assuming that you feel like it's a worthwhile investment, that the programmed use is a worthwhile long-term investment, then it's fine. But I'm just wondering
if we even needed it at all.
Yeah, I totally get like going out and throwing the hoops around. It clearly doesn't set up for much more than that, and that's certainly what I've seen in the couple of times that I've seen it at Paramount. But I've been up there and haven't really. It's the most underused aspect of the cluster of programming, around the restrooms, the picnic shelter, and the playground. It by far is the most underused programmatic element. So I mean,
That's
I suppose I don't have a strong feeling, but I understand. It's hardscape. It's got some equipment. It's obviously a cost. So
okay. We'll take a look at that as well.
Ms. J.
I have one other question. I forgot to ask earlier. Will we be able to use LED lighting as I noticed the lighting?
Yes, we would certainly look at that for the pedestrian and the parking lot lights.
Okay.
That would
Haven't got to that yet?
That would be the next step in design development to pick specific products.
Great.
But definitely that would be in line with a sustainable
Direction.
design direction.
Thank you.
Mr. Reinhardt,
I'm sorry.
since I helped buy the property, can I ask a couple of questions?
Absolutely. Wait, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just had a question about the berming. Did you, I assume you did, but did you think about the height of the berming so that it doesn't become a view hazard like the one at Town Center Park for
Yes.
vagrants and so on?
Yeah, if you look very closely at the plan, you can see the contour lines. We conceptually graded the plan, both to add visual interest. We want to direct the drainage down both the east and west property lines, and then the berming itself would be 3 to 4 foot height. So it's not going to cover somebody up hiding behind it.
Okay.
So it's enough to provide a little bit of screening, put landscaping on it, but not enough for people to hide behind.
Okay. And then ornamental grasses, like the ones at Founders Park, some of that's really tall. Have you thought about short prairie grasses that would honor our heritage and what this was 100 years ago?
Yeah, in the photographs, we showed a little bit shorter grasses, like the little blue stem and the feather reed grass that are really striking colors. Those would be in the planting beds, and then we would do a short grass prairie mix for the native areas on the perimeter of the park.
And the last thing is, could you find a place to put in a permanent hopscotch?
We can certainly look for a location.
That could be by the basketball.
I think thank you. Good. Mr. Starker, I believe, had another question.
I just wanted to kind of go back to the, since we have water there, would it be a great expense to put some sort of a seasonal drinking fountain there? Or have you had not good luck with those, or?
Typically, you can't mix the two tap types, so you'd have to have a separate 3/4 inch tap for your.
Okay, so we wouldn't be able to, the tap that we'll get would be just an irrigation tap, and then we wouldn't be able to use that for domestic?
Correct. You'd have to have a separate additional one for the drinking fountain, which is very substantial cost.
Thank you.
So Davis, one quick question.
Bring it.
Okay, sorry. Okay, one more quick question, because I apologize, I didn't go to the town meetings. Did Martinson come up, and anybody, was it like previously?
No, it was very. Are you addressing me?
Yeah.
Yes. It was very pleasant. We had a lot of good positive comments, and I believe the question of Martinson did come up, and the group was updated on the philosophy
good. It
and
wasn't,
reasoning behind not moving forward, and it didn't seem to be of concern.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I guess staff is looking for a consensus to move forward with design development based on this concept plan. Are there any objections or amendments that anyone, or are we comfortable that this is they can move forward with based on this consensus? Hearing no objections, I guess that would close the item, and we're ready to move on to item number 2, the 38th Avenue streetscape. Thank you. We have another staff report, right?
Saving this one, Bill? Oh, okay. I was just gonna get rid of that one.
Go ahead, Mr. Pronto.
As directed by council, we, as staff, put together a couple of plans to move the planters that are currently east of Pierce and cluster them on the west side. And what you have before you are really two plans with an option on each. The option 1 calls for putting some planters between around the sidewalk in the patterned concrete areas where the sidewalk meanders in front of the school, and then one on the corner by the bicycle shop, or one set there. And then in option 2, we would not have any planters on the north side of the street, but use them all up on the south side. The second alternative to each of those plans talks about, or we talk about the concrete planters that we have. We have 5 concrete planters west of Pierce, and in the option 1 and 2, we show using those 5 concrete planters to delineate the taper area where we move in to the narrowed section of the street. And in the A options, we don't do that, and we take those concrete planters and we move them and help designate and locate the parking areas just west of Pierce. So that's the options we've put together. We're, of course, be happy to do anything you'd prefer. We aren't proposing to buy any additional planters, knowing this is a short-term project. We may be moving on this fall with something more permanent. The intent is to get direction this evening, get the planters all moved this month so that come Mother's Day, the planting day, we could get all of them filled with vegetation and get a good growing season, make them look nice for this next summer.
Mr. Pons?
Just for reference, where's the second banner pole set?
It's down in front of the King Super Shopping Center. Yes, it's way at the east end. It's actually at about the location of the crosswalk. It's in that general area. We haven't found a nice location for it, and we've got works out fine with our utilities. We will have to relocate or remove one tree to get sight distance to the flasher. But other than that, it looks like a good location. There will be electric to both, and it'll be to just one pole. That way we can energize lights that might get strung across the street, and there'd be power at the very top. And so that's the intent, is to have that, and sized for LED use only, so that way we can keep the demand minimal and not require a large service to get to them. We can put up anything you'd like.
Mr. Pons?
Just to reiterate for clarification, make sure I'm right, the difference between option 1 and 2 is the planters on the north.
Correct.
And the difference between A and 1A and 2A is the use of the concrete planters specifically at the tapered section west of Upham. Is that the?
Yes. You can see that we have concrete planters shown in option 1 and option 2, just to the west of Upham, showing the taper. And then in options 1A and 2A, we've taken those planters and then moved them down and set them on either end of or near driveways to help locate the parking spaces, the on-street parking spaces.
And just obviously, the point is that you don't have enough of those to try to attempt to do an effective kind of both of that, essentially, right? I mean, to
Correct.
delineate parking lines and deal with the taper at west of Upham.
Correct. We felt if we were to try to designate the taper, we would want to bank a whole bunch of these smaller concrete planters, and they do make a good substantial barrier.
Was there any other design discussions for alternatives at specifically at the taper?
Not
Different ways to do it, whether it's actual tree plantings.
Yes, the The best alternative, of course, would be to build an island with curb and gutter and have plantings behind it, but that would be a permanent improvement, and we weren't going there at this time because we're in that trial phase.
But it looks like on one of these schemes, I don't know if it's 2 or 2A, two, you've kind of got 3 planters. Are they kind of right together, and then down the street are a couple of more?
Yeah, that's the same in both. You'll see
Okay.
that same design in both 1 and 2.
But you didn't think it would be viable to maybe put one and then go 10 or 20 feet and put another one and sort of space them out?
No, we believe it would be safer to put them together side by side, and then that way we'd have more of a physical barrier to protect the properties and anybody that might be behind that. And this way, if they were to hit one, the car would have more of a Jersey barrier kind of feel. And they're heavy planters when they're full of soil, and so I think they'd be a substantial barrier and help keep traffic out.
We don't have any Jersey barriers we could allocate to this project, do we?
City doesn't own any Jersey barriers.
This is Wheat Ridge.
Just, if I could, go ahead, Christy.
How much would it cost to move all this?
Say that again?
What's the cost of, like, any of these, like moving them all? What's the cost of moving them all down further west?
The work that's shown in these drawings?
Mm-hmm.
We have not put a dollar to that. We're going to look at our work schedule and hopefully be able to do this work in-house. That's the intent. We're gonna, once we know what you want to do this evening, then we'll go back and either and hopefully we'll be able to do the work in-house.
So when you say the work in-house, are you saying that I'm just going to have my crew do it one afternoon as a part of their daily work? Or is that what you mean by in-house, or?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so if we move, I guess my question is, I mean, to me, I'd rather do it right, or, you know, this is still kind of like, so at the end, then on the east end of 38th, then we're going to move all those planters west, and then the streets on the east end of 38th is still going to have the striping and that kind of thing. They're just not going to have planters in the street.
Correct.
So then people can kind of just start driving 2 lanes again if they chose to. I mean, you'd hope they wouldn't, but I think we even saw with planters in there, they drove 2 lanes, so because they run into them and crash into them. But so then there wouldn't be any there. And I know the other question, and I think this is probably a permanent one. Well, 2 things is, I guess, in these options, I guess we're just still not at the permanent point where are we going to widen up from Harlan to Sheridan, and then we'd avoid having people drive down, you know, lanes that kind of look like lanes but kind of don't.
Today we would keep the striping in place. That is the ultimate plan for 38th Avenue is to not, I mean, the original plan for 38th Avenue is to stripe and not put any planters in. And so as we did the improvements last year, we tried to augment what happened down in that part of the street with these concrete planters that the city already owned. So the original plan in the 38th Avenue plan didn't anticipate any kind of landscaping to help designate where the parking locations were at. We do have now a history, and folks are now driving and they're getting to know where the street is located, and if we have people using the parking, then of course they won't be a safety issue there. But to answer your question, no, we are not going to do anything. We of course can leave them the way they are today, but we believe that was council's direction, is to move all of those to the east at the last study session that we discussed this matter.
Okay, and then one more and I'm done. Who's in charge of planting the planters?
The contractor that installed them last year is in charge of putting in the original material. the counts that we had last year, the annuals that they have to replant, and then they'll be maintaining the planters one more year. We did augment them last year with using city forces and additional cash, and if we needed to, we plan to do that same work again this year if we feel it's necessary.
Okay, and then one request, if at all, we can make with those contractors. I know Mike and I have one of the original Wheat Ridge farmers on our tail all the time about buying the product in Wheat Ridge. So is there any way that we could ask that contractor to contact one of our flour, or, you know, the folks down on 44th, and I'm sure there's other ones, as far as buying some plant material from them to support our city?
We can make the request, but we cannot enforce that because it was not part of the original contract specifications that we put out last year when we contracted the project.
Yeah, find it and buy it in Wheat Ridge.
Anyone else?
Want to comment too on a, go ahead. Sorry, Mike, go.
Just real quick, that, what do you call it? It's out in front of Ceviche's.
Pop-up cafe.
I have never seen anybody sit there, even people waiting for the bus. So if that can be moved and utilized better, that would be a good deal.
We're not planning to move that one. Those are staying in place.
All the pop-up cafes are staying in place, and I believe there's a new company going into that property, and they may make use of it.
But if you look at the way that thing's laid out, he's got a porch on the back, a porch on the front, so really there's no need for that. So, you know, if somebody else would need it possibly in their backyard or something, I'd move it.
Well, we can keep an eye on that and look at when additional businesses come in and see if we can move that. There is quite a bit of expense in moving those, so we don't want to move it unless we're ready to. But
I thought I heard Joey needed it down there.
Joey needs it.
Joey was having a...
I just want to comment too on Christie's your comment about is this going to be enough? And you know, I'm a little concerned about that too. And you know, the intent of this was just this would be very temporary for this summer until we get the design done. But we are, in addition to the placement of these planters, you know, we have the banners, the banner poles with the overhead banners, but we're hoping to have resolution with Excel also to be able to use the pedestrian poles with banners.
Somebody hasn't pissed off Excel, so.
We're hoping to have resolution with Excel before summer to have banners on this stretch of the street too, which would add some visual impact too. So without, you know, putting additional money in it now, this is about all we're going to get. You know, we're also maybe potentially looking at, I don't know if this is allowed or not, but additional hanging planters on some of the poles and stuff. But Excel is only allowing or giving us permission, authorization, I think, for banners at this point, not additional flower pots. So we'll look at everything we can to beef up as much as we can until we can get the design done.
Go ahead.
1A, and looks like option 1 as well. On the south side of the street, which is in front of that would be in front of the school, wouldn't it? We have 4x6 planter pods. The north side of the street, thank you. Where are those coming from? Since we're not using.
We're taking all of the westerns,
street.
yes,
Okay.
east of Pierce. Everything gets moved to west of
So
Pierce.
we're putting the cement ones then in the front as a triangle or a wedge to stop traffic there. And then we will scatter them also on that western end of 38. But it's so hard for me to tell the difference between the two.
Right. The real small squares. That's why I brought these larger drawings. The real small squares, and there is a leader saying concrete planters.
Right.
And then the larger ones are the wood and metal planters.
Okay. I kind of like the concept of flowers on both sides of the street. It's more welcoming and complete to me. if you're trying to do something that's colorful and working with the banner versus going down one side.
Okay, so is there anyone else has some comments? Because I think we have 4 choices, and someone needs to suggest which of the Mr. Pons.
I'll make a comment and then maybe a suggestion after that. But
Sure.
I agree. I'm leaning a little bit more towards option 1, where there's some balance on the north and south side of the street. I am concerned, frankly, though, about the use of the concrete planters as the taper mechanism west of Upham, for a couple reasons. I'm not sure that it actually will work as well visually, and frankly, I'm not sure that it'll work as well from a true traffic standpoint in case it does get hit. I mean, no joking, it's not a Jersey barrier. It doesn't do what a Jersey barrier does, which is deflect the vehicle. I'm not suggesting that it should be a Jersey barrier, but I'm a little bit concerned that we're not putting the right piece of kind of traffic control there. I do agree that it's probably a bigger piece. I don't know what that means. I think we've looked at it a few weeks ago, so we probably have an idea of the money. But I'm inclined to go with option 1 or 1A, but my concern is that tapered piece. In a perfect world, I'd vote for 1A with a new version of the taper.
Other comments? Does anybody want to push this towards a specific consensus? Mr. Stites?
Just in all fairness, I would offer an option 3,
Okay.
where we get rid of all of them.
Is there a consensus for Mr. Stites, option number 3? Not hearing a consensus for option number 3.
For option 1, because I think there should be a balance.
So I think I've heard a consensus, and unless somebody objects, that it should split the visual impact to both sides of the street, which means we're accepting the non-A approach. So we still have, I'm looking for a consensus for either option number 1 or option number 2, and the main distinction being whether we prefer the concrete tapers as a best available short-term option for dealing with the taper. And I will tell you that for whatever reasons I disagree with Mr. Pons. I think that good is better than nothing, but we're looking for a consensus out of the group as to whether we prefer to focus on the taper or not. Is that a fair?
Option 1 is the balanced.
Right, so option 1 is the balance, so we're deciding between A and non-A, and the main differentiation is whether we attempt to focus on the taper with the concrete planters. And so I'm looking to see if there is a consensus for that or against that. Okay, Mrs. Langsworthy, perfect.
All right, so I know that we talk about the planters that have been hit on the south side. If we put planters on the north side where nobody's used to them being, are we not going to open ourselves up?
No, we will not. They're setting up on the sidewalk.
Oh, on the sidewalk.
So they're up on, so they'll actually be that extra 6 inches higher as well, but they'll be up on the sidewalk.
Make sure.
I bet I can hit them anyway.
I bet you could, without working too hard at it.
I just want to be clear on that one before all right, that's it.
Mr. Starker?
Are we decreasing obviously we're decreasing the width of the sidewalk. Do we have a generous sidewalk there that we can afford then to take? These are 4 or 5 feet wide.
We are not decreasing the actual width of the sidewalk because the sidewalk meanders in and away from the curb, and there's patterned concrete, and we'll be setting them in the patterned concrete sections.
Okay, so we're on the streetscape, not really on the sidewalk, so to
Correct.
speak.
So, Mr. Pons.
Your consensus is?
I don't make a consensus, I'm the chair.
Excellent. I mean, I kind of accept the challenge. I mean, if we're not going to put the money towards dealing with the taper right now, then I would say I would ask for consensus on option 1 versus 1A. So it's option 1, that's the balanced side with the taper.
So the consensus on the table is to do option 1, not 1A. Is there any objection to moving forward with that consensus?
I would like to also add that this is with the assumption that we're going to be able to do that with our current staff and it won't be a cost.
A friendly amendment to ask Public Works if they can do it with their own staff as opposed to paid consulting. I
Yes.
believe that was enough direction, Mr.
Yes, it
Parenteau?
is.
Okay, thank you very much. Next on the agenda is item number 3, the Sustainability Plan Update and Discussion.
Ms. Manwaring's back. She is firing up her presentation. I'll go ahead and get it introduced a little bit. This is was a City Council strategic plan item from a couple years ago, and Joyce was the lucky one to get this assigned to her, and she was thrilled about that and has done a great job, actually. She put together a cross-section of employees from all departments in the city. And as you all know, sustainability, the word alone is a very big word, and there's a lot of different definitions, and it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So I think Joyce has done, and the committee's done a great job of putting together an initial plan for us that the city could build on in the future.
It's a 7-syllable word.
It is a big word. Joyce, those lights are off. He's getting the camera lights.
So I'll just, I'm sorry, I was working on getting my plan up, so I'm sure Patrick told you that this was part of your strategic plan that you created under top priorities. And yes, I was assigned to try to create a sustainability plan. So that's what I'm going to present to you tonight. And this plan was created by a committee of employees internally. And it focuses on the environmental aspects of municipal operations to start with. So as we all became educated about sustainability plans, we learned that there are really 3 aspects to a comprehensive sustainability plan. And those aspects include the environment, social sustainability, and economic sustainability. So as an example, as I mentioned in your memo, the 38th Avenue plan and small business retention type plans, that's really economic sustainability today. Social sustainability, Live Local is a good example of a social sustainability program. What the Wheat Ridge Cultural Commission did with Wheat Ridge Reads is also an example of that type of program because it brings community together. So the purpose of a sustainability plan is to provide a tool to use as a basis for decision making and supporting sustainability. So it brings all of the aspects of sustainability together. It guides the maintenance and long-term viability of the city and supports responsible management of city resources. So that's what we've started with today. As I mentioned, we have an interdepartmental committee, so we have 2 people from every department that sits on our Employee Sustainability Committee, and we got together and set goals, decided that we had a lot of things and actions that the city was doing that contributed to sustainability, and we needed to combine those and list those and put them into a plan. So that's where we started. We consolidated operations and maximized efficiency within these items, and we're trying to create best practices around sustainability. So this is the mission statement that the committee developed. The City of Wheat Ridge strives to manage all of its resources in a responsible manner with a focus on the long-term environmental, economic, and social well-being of the city and staff. So to get a handle again on sustainability, because we know it's a word that's used in a lot of different ways in a lot of different places today, we divided this plan into 2 sections, municipal operations and what we call livable communities. Within municipal operations, which is the bulk of the plan, there are 3 sections, then those are the three that you see there: waste reduction, recycling, natural resource conservation and management, energy and transportation. So the first one, by definition, was to identify and implement measures to reduce waste and increase recycling within city operations. And all of this information, I'm not going to read you all of the accomplishments, but what the committee did is they went through and they listed all of the things that the city has already done that meets the definition of that particular section: waste reduction and recycling. And all of that is in your documented hard copy on the sustainability plan. So, you can pull out a couple of things. Recycled plastic bags for dog waste. So the Parks Department collects King Soopers bags and loads our dog waste receptacles with those in the parks. One of the action items was to expand the recycling program. And let me back up just a minute. The way this plan is organized, you have accomplishments, future opportunities, and then a chart with all the goals and action plans. And the chart is really the evolving, it all will evolve and change, but the chart is really like an action plan. And those specific items, as they're accomplished, will move over to an accomplishments chart. So that's the way the plan is organized. So one of the goals was expand the recycling program, which has occurred. As we rebid our trash contract, we included recycling. And now we're going to single stream recycling. And our employee committee is doing a great job. They're very passionate, and they have an education program for all the employees for them to understand what they can recycle and what they can't. And then we have this is the easiest one to create some metrics with or measure our progress on. Another goal was to create awareness and educate staff on recycling, and then reduce waste. The second section was natural resource conservation and management. So again, identify and implement conservation measures. There's a long list of accomplishments, including retrofitting the irrigation system for water conservation of parks. And those are all the things that have been accomplished in the over the last 5 years, really. And just a good example of consolidating things the city was already doing to support sustainability. So each one of the goals for this part of the municipal operation plan is listed. And again, I'm not going to read them all to you. You have them all in your sustainability plan. Preserve existing water sources. Again, that can be everything from creating a community forestry plan that talks about how much you're going to water, you know what it is and what your plan and what your water usage is. The last one was energy and transportation. Examine and inventory the city's energy consumption and look for opportunities to minimize use and reduce the city's carbon footprint. So there are several energy accomplishments that have taken place, and that includes facility energy audits, retrofitting light bulbs, anything that the city can move forward with and do that we're aware of. And then there's also some specific goals. And if you would like me to stop and talk about any of these, I'd be glad to try to do that. I may need to get back with you on specific information, but it is a nice long list of accomplishments, and as I said, each one of the departments is contributing to that. Again, the revised street sweeping policies and procedures to limit that to 4 times a year. I think that occurred over 10 years ago, and that reduces air pollution and energy use. So we will do an audit on City Hall this year, an energy audit, and we'll find out what other kinds of things we can do to improve our energy efficiency in this building. Transportation goals. I think the Public Works Department, and again, I can't speak to detail, they are measuring and evaluating their fuel consumption so they can make good decisions around some of their operating decisions. And then livable communities, I think, is really the second part of the sustainability policy and plan that you may have been thinking about more generally when you set your strategic plan and goal. And we decided to call this section Livable Communities and list all of the programs and partnerships that the city contributes to or participates in that represent sustainability values and goals that contribute to making Wheat Ridge a livable community. So all of this list includes those partnerships, those projects that the city works on, both through funding them and then through in some type of partnership. We consider Wheat Ridge Carnation Festival, again, building community, the Wheat Ridge Farmers Market, access to fresh fruits and vegetables, the Wheat Ridge 2020 funded residential energy audit program through the CDBG grant. These are all sustainable programs within the community that aren't focused on the environmental aspects of municipal operations. So the sustainability plan will continue to grow and recognize and document any program that relates to livable communities in a passive way. So we don't really have the resources to create these programs as part of a sustainability program, but we can document and list those and keep track of what kinds of sustainable actions are occurring. We want to support those programs as much as we can with in-kind services or funding. I believe, for example, the large item pickup is a city-funded program. So as one goal that was identified is to complete a community-wide sustainability plan that includes community programs and participation beyond the scope of municipal operations. And as an action item, excuse me a minute, get back. So tonight, I guess, in terms of city council action, if you would like to see that type of plan move forward, and if I can answer any more questions about it, I will. Additional resources are going to be required from a staffing standpoint in terms of a sustainability coordinator type position that has the expertise and time to take that program further out into the community, similar to what, if you remember, Golden presented to you, where they have citywide initiatives, citywide recycling programs. They are engaging the community. They have a sustainability commission, I think. It would be that type of program. What we can do in future actions is our employee committee will continue to meet and brainstorm about sustainability items that apply to municipal operations that we can move forward on without using a lot of additional resources. And then we want to try to work now this next step on defining metrics and being able to measure what some of those accomplishments will be. And that's a difficult thing to do, is to determine the metrics of any of these actions and goals. So the direction we would need from you tonight, we have a signed and prepared policy and plan that Patrick has approved. If you want to take it further, we'll need to have additional funding or some direction that you would like to have a more comprehensive livable communities or community sustainability plan.
Questions for Joyce? Does anybody want to? Ms. J?
First of all, I think you've done a great job I remember talking to you a year or so ago that this was a whole new game for you. And you've jumped in and organized something. And we've got some employees that are doing some great volunteer work, which I think is wonderful. We've talked before about getting a sustainability coordinator, even on a part-time basis. I believe we had someone come to us from Golden. And I think that's something we're going to have to look at because this is a sizably large amount of work to continue. And it's a reality for our world today that we're going to have to look at as a contributing city to our region and to our country. So I think we're going to have to bite the bullet on that one. And while I'm on that bandstand or Orange Crate or whatever it is, I'm also would like to see us get serious about incorporating that bike plan that we've got on the shelf and look at that as something we need to incorporate into our creating those paths so that the obvious outcome of that is. And one other question, how long has it been since the City Hall has had an energy audit? A few years or?
The City Hall has never actually had an energy audit. It's scheduled for this year.
Okay.
In fact, we have a contract and it should be starting soon.
Good.
Further questions or comments? Mr. Pons? Mr. DeMott? You guys flip a coin?
We did. We just flipped it. I won. Thank you for the work. I know how intense this type of effort can be. I think your last, the slide before this, I think is important perhaps to linger on for a second, which is you're going to continue the committee that's already formed is going to continue to meet and both track the goals that have been instituted as well as probably future planning for whatever extent of time that they would continue to meet. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement.
And in that they will be talking about the metrics, the measurement of the goals.
We are going to need to get some help in figuring out how that's done. But I think we haven't even gone there yet. So I think investigating what resources are out there in terms of defining metrics is our next step.
Okay. And I have some resources that I can share with you. So and I think I know from experience that the ability to measure and track, and then to react to whether or not you're tracking properly on your goals is critical. So I can share some resources on that. I totally support the ultimate projection of, I guess Joyce said it, taking that next step and having sustainability presence in a real way with a staff presence. Having said that, I'm not sure that it's the immediate next step. I believe there is an intermediate step that involves, in fact, kind of some of the measurement and metrics piece, as well as I think even flushing out a little bit more of what the community-based part of the plan can be. And I think that would frame exactly the need and maybe even the type of person who would fit the role of sustainability coordinator best. So for what that's worth, I support the ultimate goal, but I don't know that it's the immediate next step. I think, whether I know for a fact there's quite a bit of community resources, people who would probably sit down as an ad hoc committee or something like that, who would absolutely love to put some energy into thinking about that in a way that might help or carry forward the great work that the staff committee has done. And maybe it's intermingling of community members and staff. I don't know, but I would support kind of a next step that isn't going as far as making a decision right now about the sustainability coordinator, but more really trying to flesh this out even further.
Mr. DeMott?
That's about where I was there. I think it's just become a lot more mainstream than it was, and long story short, I don't think a sustainability coordinator is necessary, at this time, like you said, if it's not, if we don't have a specific goal, a huge specific goal, I'd hate to hire somebody just to hold together what we've been doing. I mean, everybody's been doing such a somebody else, so.
Any other comments, questions, observations? So was that a consensus for staff to continue to monitor the issue and look for new opportunities without necessarily hiring additional or going directly into the program? Hearing no objections, I think that was the direction.
Another event the community's planning, I'm not sure if Joyce mentioned this one, it should coming up this spring or summer, is an e-recycling program. A lot of communities do that, so we're working on, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if we have the dates set or anything yet, but
April 27th
Okay.
at Anderson Park.
so it'll allow employees to, or community members to drop off electronic equipment that you can't just throw out in your trash, so.
Can I add something? Perhaps, Joyce,
I'm sorry?
if you could summarize what type of activities a coordinator, even as I said, even a part-time one, what they could do, because we're not sure whether, what activities would be possible if we had somebody professional that was on staff. As I said, part-time, which is what the Golden, I can't remember her name, what she suggested. She talked about the ability to go after grants and the ability to kind of bring this together. It's kind of like we don't know what we're missing out on or what's possible until yourself maybe would give us a list of what else could be done and what's needed to get it done.
Correct. I think that I could try to put together for you a list of programs as examples. I know Golden is measuring the energy usage citywide. Arvada has contracted with the firm, and I'm sure they're funding it where citizens can call and schedule an energy audit for their home. So there's a lot of outreach to the community. I'm sure there's a large list of programs that I can't even think of that may be possible from just the environmental aspect of sustainability. I could try summarize something for you here in the next few months to see if I can come up with a list of those type of programs and maybe more of a summary of what other communities are doing and using their sustainability coordinators to do.
Great. Mrs. Langworthy?
I've been to the Jefferson County Safety Fair, and they generally do their e-cycling event in conjunction with that. On April 27th, we have a safety fair taking place through our police department over at the Wheat Ridge 5-8. Would it may be better to have that e-cycling at the same event where you're going to have a large group of people anyways, or is it that you just don't know if that would be, there's going to be enough space?
Well, we've contracted with MedTech. It's actually a fairly easy event to put on in terms of staff resources, but I'm not sure about the space requirements because right now, if you have a successful event, it's my understanding, and the one that I attended, there's a lot of car stacking, and the safety fair has quite a few pedestrians and booths, so we can certainly look towards that in the future.
Just for me, it's
you have
all
a captive audience, right?
Yes, if you got people coming, because when I go to the Jeffco Fair, I bring my e-cycling with me because I know that I could go drop that off, go park, and go do that thing.
Yeah.
Of course, they hold it over at Red Rock, so it's much more space. But I just wasn't sure if that was even a consideration.
I had not thought about doing that. We'll take a look at it.
Ms. J, you looked like you had another, were you done? I think I got nods on that for Joyce to bring that back. I think that's what I saw. So, all right. Staff reports, community forum, council retreat planning. Mr. Goff.
Sure. I sent you a few emails out, but Davis and I had discussed some dates and formats for a community focus group forum and council retreat. Our idea was to, I think there was a lot of a lot of thought and discussion from a few of you to bring back some type of community interaction with council and as part of the annual strategic planning retreats. So we thought we could do that during the week of May 13th on some evening. I've had some initial thoughts on how we could format that. We could have a group of citizens look at your current goals and objectives and get some feedback on that as the city is still moving in the right direction. We could pull out some stuff from our recent citizen survey, and dig a little bit deeper, because sometimes you don't get a lot of. It's just you're getting answers and to questions at the surface level, and sometimes you may want more information about what they really meant. So we could pull out a couple questions from our citizen survey that we may want more information on. There could be 3 or 4 large policy questions that you want to test with this group and get feedback from a focus group of employees or citizens. So that would be the focus of some type of community retreat, and then you guys could take that information you gather at that community forum and bring it to your retreat. I think in one of my emails I sent you, I think one topic I think we definitely need to continue speaking about at a retreat is long-term fiscal sustainability of the city. That was our major topic last year. I don't know if I think we could have some time to talk about some other ideas too, but that's one area that I think we need to continue that conversation with. So we threw out some dates. I sent you out another email today after talking with the facilitator. The June 14th and 15th date was not really working very well for her or myself. And then also just the timing of it, it was kind of getting pretty late in the summer. So we thought maybe we could move it up May 17th and May 18th. Do a similar format we've done in the past, a Friday late afternoon, evening, and a Saturday morning, early afternoon type event. So just like to get some direction and consensus on moving forward with some type of community forum and retreat, and getting ideas that you may have and suggestions.
Mr. Bonds?
So now you're collapsing the dates. Does that mean that there's really 3 gatherings that week? One is a community forum, one is a meeting on the night of the 17th, and the other one is a half day on Saturday. Is that correct?
That was the suggestion when it started looking like the mid-June date was falling apart.
So there would be 2 nights in a morning is what we're talking about.
Right. And
I'm not sure council would even have to be at the community forum. We're looking at, that's a good thing to talk about, I think, but we're looking at bringing a facilitator. It might be beneficial for you not to be there I don't know. That's something we should talk through.
What I had in my head when I first brought this idea up in January was a repeat of what I recall as calling a citizen summit the first year, which was a sort of moderated table event, was it not? And we mixed people around and got feedback on a variety of topics.
I think each of you sat at a table, right? Yep.
Right.
Was that open then to anyone who wanted to participate?
It was open. I think we did an invitation thing where we actually we filled tables with people that were willing, so we sort of knew the numbers. There was a fixed number, but it was sort of open invitation. And it seemed to me that was my first year on council that I heard different things from what I heard in other forums. A broader variety of people came than show up on the average Monday night. So, as I recall, I think I met Ms. Davis that night. Yeah.
Italian.
Yeah. I already knew you.
As a citizen? Yeah. Were you there as a citizen? Only a citizen.
You didn't make as big an impression on me as Ms. Davis did.
Yeah, there's all kinds of different ways you could do it. That's definitely I think you just want to make sure it's productive, and you're really trying to get some information out of the group that's going to be helpful and beneficial for you to help you.
Frankly, I think the up and the downside of these dates are the same. The upside is we get all that fresh input when we sit down and talk to each other, and the downside is we're getting overwhelmed. I mean, we get so much in a short period of time. But it was driven by logistics, not necessarily preference, and
So I guess we're asking, is that too much to try and do in a week, really?
So I guess the question comes back, are we expected to be at the community one, or are we not gonna be at that one?
That's up to you guys, obviously. I mean, you could do either way. You could give us direction on what you want, what kind of feedback you're looking for, and have it, yeah. It could be beneficial.
If we'd have done it the last time, I wouldn't have had the benefit of Ms. Davis's comments in advance, and which I found highly helpful.
We just want, yeah. So that's an option, or you could be there and you could help facilitate the meetings, or I think it would be kind of good to have a neutral third-party facilitator there, as long as it's Marcia Hughes, I think we're trying to use, who we used last year. I thought was pretty good. You'd have to give her pretty good feedback on what type of information you're trying to get out of these folks, and which we could definitely do before those dates, I believe.
So the meeting on the week of the 13th wouldn't be on the Monday night, the 13th?
No, she's not available that night, and we have
another council meeting.
So she's available any other night that week. So it'd be Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday.
Okay. Yeah. Let's start with the council retreat. Is there anybody that has a big problem with those weekend dates in May for the retreat itself? No. Okay, so that looks. So that's. I just feel the flu coming on that. I mean, no, my bad. I guess. So then it gets us back to: do we want to put a forum out there for the public in advance of that? Conceptually, it seems useful. I'm not sure the. I think they were all invites.
I think that's how it was handled.
I think that's we
asked council to give us a list of 5 or so names.
But I want the right to cross out Joey DeMott's invitations. It's just.
But I think it's
can we each get one? Like, what do you get? We each get one cross out of it.
I think it's important too to make sure that it is available maybe to the whole community too, so anybody that wants to participate. But maybe you guys can personally still invite people, and maybe we could limit it to the first, 50 or 75 or 100 people, depending on our space. Yeah, we'd take care of that. Yeah, have them call in an RSVP and.
Well, if the idea is acceptable, maybe Patrick and I try and come back in 2 weeks with a specific proposal on the invitation part. Is that all we're really missing? All right. So Patrick, I'm sorry. Go ahead, George.
Well, I want to. You brought up, I think, a good point. If that is going to happen the 14th, 15th, or 16th, then there's really no time to compile it. Certainly no time for us to pre-digest it before the 17th. So then that would take.
We'd present. Staff would do that and bring it back to the retreat with a facilitator in a format that it's summarizing what we heard and didn't hear.
Okay. I mean, that's a short turnaround, especially. If it was Thursday night, what are you going to do? I mean, you spend Friday morning.
We'd probably make sure we'd schedule it for Wednesday. I think we'd shoot for maybe Wednesday or something. And
all right. I mean, I think there is a little bit of concern in it, only because then I think you could spend. I'm going to go back to your point, which is laying out the agenda for the retreat. If we could obviously, depending on how prepared we were, we could take all of the time to focus on the forum, and that may be the right thing to do, but it also may be something that we're not taking the time that we need to talk about the fiscal and the financial issues that we have on the table.
I appreciate the point. I think it's the best compromise. What's the alternative?
Maybe this. Well, no. I guess to do the community forum earlier, not to change our.
No. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we could look at maybe.
We can try and back the date up. No, it's a fair point.
Yeah, I mean, not to change. Like if the 17th and 18th are good for us.
We are only talking about weeks out already.
Yeah, no, I get it. So
We'll look at that too. If we can't, Patrick and I will bring back a proposal for two things. One is an outline of what we might have for the community forum, and the second is just an outline of topics for the retreat as well, and we'll throw that back out on the table in 2 weeks. Is that, can we do that?
Okay. Yeah, we usually start 5-ish, I think, and then have dinner and do a few things and wrap up by 8:30.
But that's the opening round of the Scotch tournament. I don't know how you feel about that.
So I heard a consensus that May 17th and 18th dates are fine. Okay, and then we'll find a date.
Revisit the date and the format for the other one. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, you.
Have enough time though. I mean, if we wait for 2 weeks,
We're trying.
Yep.
We'll try and make
We'll
it
get
work.
on it
Well,
right away.
I mean, but if you guys get something earlier, is that something that, because it's not really, I mean, can you send us the information and, well, no, because we have to get an invitation out really soon. We're gonna lose people because we're not gonna, we're not gonna give them
We'll discuss it and figure out how to get back to you.
Maybe.
I'd be glad to encourage dialogue online, but I have Mr. Dahl over here in the corner who's scowling at me already, and would hate for us to be drifting towards a decision and a non.
But we do come 15 minutes early on Monday's meeting. Maybe we can, if you have something.
If we were ready for Monday night, maybe we can find an opportunity to discuss it. Yeah. Great. Okay.
Yeah,
We would have to amend the agenda to the regular meeting or hold an optional study session thereafter. I'm sure we can work through the logistics in a way that satisfies Mr. Dahl.
I have a couple more staff reports too.
Okay, staff reports, I'm sorry.
Mr. Dahl's got a quick update on our discussion about massage therapist centers.
Council had asked last time about the ability for the city to regulate massage therapy from a licensing or permitting standpoint. And the chief and I were fairly sure we recalled that the statute precludes the city from doing that, and that's true. I went back and checked the statute today, and that really is the reason the statute was amended to basically take cities out of the business of licensing or regulating massage therapists. And that was the reason we took that whole chapter out of our code, leaving the regulation of massage parlors, separate kind of activity, in the code, and so we can license, regulate, et cetera, those operations. What we can do with therapists, as permitted by the statute, is two things. One, zoning, because just like anything else, you can say what zone districts any activity, dry cleaners, whatever, can be in. And we do that, as I mentioned to you. It's a permitted use, I believe, in just about all the commercial zone districts licensed massage therapists. And as well, the statute makes clear that the city can pursue criminal charges for violations of law, whether it be a massage therapist, massage parlor, or any other kind of activity. The statute, in taking the city out of the licensing and regulation business, made clear that no, we're not taking you out of the law enforcement business. That there's plenty of criminal and other statutes that would apply, and so we're able to continue with that activity. That's my short course.
So just a quick question on that. So I know it's zoning that okay, we do control. Is there a way we could set codes up? So like could we set I don't even know if it's a code, but if you set some kind of how we do with some of our landscaping and that type of thing that it has to have so many trees and grass and within. I mean, is there a way that we could set up regulations that if it's any kind of service business, that there's not a locked door into the entranceway and that it's a viewable lobby area? I mean, it's just I know that's not going to avoid what goes on behind a locked door, but it might avoid how it might avoid just some things that, that's going on that, indirectly what's going on, and you have to ring a doorbell and do those types of things, that it's just odd for a business.
I think it'd be not impossible, but really tough to accomplish that through a zoning sort of supplementary regulation set of regs, because those are going to need to apply to a pretty broad class of just businesses. And to the extent you set up a whole series of sort of physical design standards and said, okay, here are these standards, but you really only apply those standards through the zoning to massage therapy centers, then I think what you've ended up doing is trying to regulate massage therapy centers from in as close to licensing and registration as you can, and that's precluded to you by the state. So you're, we could try that, but it would have to. The problem is you'd have to regulate, retail businesses of X square feet, which means that you'd be requiring that of every dry cleaners and every locksmith and every tobacco shop and every, yeah, but you're going to be. I think you're just. I think you're going to end up pulling a lot of other businesses into that scope, and it's. I really wouldn't recommend it, honestly. I understand the concern, but I think that the better angle for that is twofold. One, you can regulate massage parlors in that way, and the city does. And with respect to massage therapy activities that are, say they're that, you always have criminal enforcement. And those are the two, I think, more direct and well supported ways for the city to address problems in either kind of business. Otherwise, it's kind of a square peg through a round hole, and it's hard to do. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. Additional comments or questions for Mr. Dahl on any topic?
Any topic? No, don't open the door.
All right.
Don't open that door. No.
All right. Metro Mortgage Assistance Plus Program.
Just real quickly, what I passed out is I did email this to you last week too, I believe. The Metro Mortgage Assistance Plus Program. The mayor has been working with the mayor's office in Denver on this program, and we're bringing this forward to you tonight to see if the city would like to participate. To do that, council would have to adopt the attached delegation and participation agreement. This basically just allows the city to participate in this mortgage assistance program that provides competitive 30-year fixed rate loans and also grants for down payment assistance to qualified home buyers. And we've done this in the past with CHAFA, Colorado Housing Finance Authority, and also the Metro Mayor's Caucus. In the past, they used the private activity bonds that the city gets an annual allocation of, but with the current mortgage rate interest situation, the private activity bonds aren't competitive anymore because the rates are so low. So none of those organizations are using private activity bonds for this program. But Denver is putting this program together, and they're working with, I believe, one bank, U.S. Bank maybe. I think there's some information in here. So essentially, if the city wants to participate, there's no financial liability to the city or any type of liabilities. It's just we have to pass this delegation and participation agreement, which gives the authority to the bank that's participating in this program to provide loans and grant assistance to Wheat Ridge residents. It's as simple as that. I was going to say as simple as that, but Joyce, you seem to have a puzzled look on your face. So if you have any questions. They have $15 million in funding, and so it's kind of a first come, first serve. And this one's a little bit unique from the Metro Mayors and the CHAFA program, that there's no first-time home buyer requirement. There was under that other program. The maximum credit qualifying income for this program is $91,000 for a household of two, or $103,000 for three or more. And there's no maximum home purchase price, which was also a requirement under those other programs.
Patrick, I don't understand how there's the grant portion of it is funded how?
It's funded through it's through the nonprofit. Each home buyer, there's a non-repayable DPA grant for down payment and closing costs, which is equal to 4% of the principal amount of the loan. This is funded directly through Denver at a mortgage closing, and they get the funds through let's see. Upon sale of the loan to the servicer, it's U.S. Bank is the mortgage, will be the mortgage holder. So there's a program sponsor that provides the funding. Let's see. Thought it mentioned who it was in here. Yeah.
DPA grant for the down payment and closing costs. Each home buyer receives a DPA grant.
That's down payment assistance. What the
Grant.
DPA stands for.
Who funds that grant is what I can't.
It comes from GNMA funds. Are pooled and delivered by the servicer.
I mean, that was sort of the way I was reading it, but they're going to underwrite.
Denver, yeah, you're right, at mortgage loan closing. But they're getting funds, I think, through some program or something. Because there's these GNMA certificates. I don't know if it's like a tax credit program from the feds. Loans must be.
I guess, I would like. I guess the concern
I can get more information on that if you'd like when we bring it back. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess
the mayor actually had a meeting set up to meet with the Denver's mayor's office, but I think they had to reschedule, so he was going to get more information on the program.
And I just have a little bit of a concern about how the decision gets made as to who's the beneficiary and favoritism, and I'd like to just understand how that piece falls into it. I mean, conceptually, if the city of Denver would like to give our home buyers 4% of their down payment, I'm conceptually okay with the idea of the Denver taxpayers.
Yeah, I think it has to be it has to go through a U.S. bank. They're the only ones sponsoring the program. I mean, it was similar when I think the private activity bonds were being used. I mean, it was financed through Chaffa, who used, I'm sure, just a single lending source. Well, I can find out more information before we bring it back for approval. Okay. One last quick thing. I don't know if you remember the Conti bill. Representative Conti is proposing a bill at the legislature to that would essentially regulate or relegate sales tax collection to the state and put forward a statewide tax rate. So it basically takes away the city's home rule status on tax collection and tax auditing. And we sent an email out too, if you remember that. It looks like it may actually come out of committee, which we were surprised. So if it does, CML has warned us that they're going to need everybody's help on calling the House and asking them to vote against us. This would be a very bad thing for the city. We don't want the state taking over our tax collection because it does take all of our auditing control away also. Plus, they want to, this bill could potentially dictate a consistent tax rate across the whole state. And this bill is coming forward to help with, potentially taxing the internet. And then also, there's been a few large retail companies in the state that have been complaining about the complexity of Colorado's tax system and the home rule status of all the different cities and all the different tax rules in all the different cities. So this bill is addressing that issue.
Would council like to allow me to respond through the CML committee if this issue moves forward on behalf of the council? Hearing no objection, I'll do so on behalf of the council if it gets to the next step. I will strongly represent the council's opinion on this matter. The state running it for it, right? Clear.
Well, there is another bill sponsored by the House Speaker right now also that is, the feds are looking at a bill, the market fairness act or whatever that would allow for taxation of the internet. And Colorado, there's only a couple states that have this complex tax system. Colorado is one of them. And there is another bill in the House sponsored by the House Speaker, I believe, that will prepare Colorado to implement the federal legislation so that we could tax internet, but we don't have to change our home rule structures in the state. That's the bill we would support. My mic was not on. That's all I have.
Any elected officials matters? Anybody?
Just a quick one, because I'm on the Wheat Ridge Aging Needs Task Force. So far, we've just kind of been trying to define what we want to do. And at our last meeting, we basically decided to host 2 meetings where we invite people over the age of 60 to come and kind of talk about what their needs actually are. Because at this point, we've just talked about what we think it is, but we really want to hear from the citizens what they feel it is, and then try to go, and bring forward some ideas to council that could be done with little or no money, and that, well, let's just be real, there is little or no money, and, provide a benefit for our citizens. So we don't have a date or anything else set, but I'll update further.
Okay. Anyone?
I want to request a future study session item. George and I talked about it, and I haven't had a chance to talk to Joyce, but I know she would probably agree. But I know in the past we've talked about, or I know Joyce brought it up today, about the master bike and ped plan, and there's been some requests to us as far as the good news is the folks that are making the request understand that we don't have the $70 million or whatever that it's going to take, but they've made some, in my opinion, very small requests of us that I'd like to follow up on. And what that request is putting those little sharrows that you see in Denver and stuff that have the bike and the arrows. They call them sharrows. I think it's kind of cool. Sharrows down, especially our major bikeways, if it be Pierce and things like that, that we just paint the streets with those. And I think that request is very minor and a nice one that they're making, so I'd like to see if we could move forward with that. At a study session or whatever needs to be done.
Would Joyce be able to, I mean, she's the,
This would be Public Works, Tim.
for the likely locations?
Yeah, we could look at likely locations and where they
Okay.
could and could not go.
What
and
they
bring
talked
a
about
discussion
was like Pierce and the
cost.
major, the bike routes.
Mhm.
And if we could just make it a little bit more clear that this is a designated bike route. And they've been very wonderful saying, hey, we'll try and get grant money. I think last year they offered money to Tim to help with the paint costs. So I'd just like to move forward on doing something.
Other elected officials matters? If there's no objection, I guess we're adjourned.
Joyce, do you have on your calendar what date that Wheat Ridge